Hey folks, today's video is a introvert's guide to roleplay. So if you are a fellow introvert like me or a shy individual, you might find getting into roleplay a little bit difficult. And here are some of the things that I have found personally helpful, as well as that I know are helpful for other introverts and shy, quiet role players to, dip your toe a little bit more into the roleplay aspect of tabletop RPGs if you're not quite as comfortable with that. So I'm going to share with you 7 tips for how to get into roleplay. Before I jump into any of this, I will say, don't compare yourself to especially the extroverts at the table. That might be a lot easier for them, and everybody's going to have a little bit of a different approach to roleplay and all of that. So find what works for you, what works for your table. The first piece of advice is ask for help. Let the game master as well as the other players know that you want to try and engage in roleplay a little bit more and say like, hey, can you help bring my character into these moments? This is especially good to let the game master know. They can make sure to kind of maybe linger on you for a moment or two longer before moving on. It also is great to let the other players know because they might be able to have their characters like ask you to tag along to a negotiation session, or even just asking your character input. They can help kind of draw you in. And with that, make sure that once that invitation has been offered, that you take it up on it, that you try and engage as much as you can. The second tip is kind of on a similar note, and that's especially for introverts who, like me, maybe are quieter at the table. I naturally just have a quieter voice. I don't project quite as much at the table. I have to really actively think about it. And so I usually try and let players know, especially if it's people I haven't played with before, that like, hey, I'm a little bit quieter, so I'll sit next to somebody who maybe is a little bit aware of that. They can help kind of, if a whole bunch of other people who maybe are louder are kind of accidentally steamrolling over you, another player might be able to notice, or the game master. This is also a great opportunity to, just like raise your hand. This especially happens if you're online gaming. It doesn't work so much if you have like Zoom set up so just the speaker is there, but if you've got the grid, just raising your hand, that lets at least the game master know, hey, I have something to contribute. You're not necessarily interrupting, because I know for me, I don't want to interrupt other people, but I definitely want to contribute. So asking for help, being heard, raising your hand, something like that. The third tip is to put yourself in the middle of the role play. So this works for if you're playing in person, not so much online, but sit in the middle of the table. If you've got like a table that 3 people sit along one side, choose that center seat, or sit next to the game master so the game master has an easier time hearing you, as well as that will make it so that kind of naturally you'll end up getting involved more, because if you're sitting between 2 players who are role-playing back and forth, they will probably at some point engage you because they're looking back and forth and actively see you. I know like when I go to a party or stuff like that, I tend to like want to hang out more in the corner, and that's what I've found myself doing at a table. I will kind of pick a spot a little bit more out of the way, and it's just the like out of sight, out of mind. Other players may not be involving you as much or wanting to roleplay as much, just because if they aren't seeing you, if you aren't kind of in their line of sight, sometimes it can just, out of sight, out of mind. Before I get to the rest of my tips, make sure that you're subscribed, because we make videos here every week all about tabletop RPGs and our other geeky interests. The fourth tip is establish an existing relationship with one of the other characters at the table. This is really great to do in a session 0, and it can be something like your siblings, or maybe you work together, or you know of each other. I find sometimes it's a little bit easier to get into roleplay a little bit more one-on-one and then branching out from the group. So having that established relationship, you can kind of, maybe talk with that player a little bit more before, after games, to kind of figure out what the relationship between your characters are. You can role play that, maybe your role play focuses much more heavily on that character as the party is getting to know each other and starting out. And then as you become more comfortable, you can start branching out and role-playing with the other people, but that gives you a stepping stone of where to start. And the fifth tip is to play with people you're comfortable with, or get to know some of the people so that you feel comfortable with them. I find that it's easier to kind of really get into roleplay when I'm not worrying about like, are other people going to think that I'm being silly or weird because I'm really getting invested in this character? If you just feel comfortable and know like, yeah, we're all on the same page, nobody's going to be judging me, it's a lot easier to kind of ignore those thoughts and really get into the role play. So whether it's that you have a dedicated group that you play with all the time, or if you are playing with a new group of people, again, maybe it's not trying to get to know the whole group all at once, but, grab drinks or hang out with one or two people in the group after a session, get to know them a little bit more. And then, another session, maybe hang out one-on-one with somebody else, and you can gradually kind of get a little bit more comfortable so that diving into that role play is going to be easier. And, those are also great moments to bring up the like, hey, can you help me out with it? Oh, can we come up with a cool thing between our two characters? You can build maybe those things that will make role play a little bit easier. The sixth tip is kind of a two-parter, and that is fake it till you make it. That's something that I've done just a lot of. I'm already role-playing a character, so I'm just going to pretend that I'm an outgoing person on top of that. And there are kind of two different approaches, I think, to this. And the first approach is dive in head first. Maybe it's playing a character that's very different than you, and you lean really hard into those different moments. Ways you can kind of go about that are, maybe you have an accent, maybe you have catchphrases that help kind of solidify that character. Maybe you let the rest of the party know that you're kind of maybe leaning in, going a little over the top on purpose to try and get better at role play, because at times doing that you can end up playing cliche or annoying characters. And if the party knows, hey, that's what you're doing, they might be a little bit more forgiving of that, as well as, be able to help you help yourself with getting more comfortable with the role play. Now, the other side of that is you can ease into it. So instead of trying to like fake it the whole session, say, I'm going to try and really focus on role playing one scene this session instead of doing like the whole 3-hour session. Maybe it's just 15 minutes. And then the next session, try and do 2 scenes. Now, be mindful as you're doing this that you don't, as you're getting more comfortable, you're not just like hogging the spotlight completely. It's probably not going to happen, but be mindful. And as you kind of each session push yourself a little bit more, you're going to find it a lot easier until suddenly you're like, oh, I can do this. This is fine. And the final piece of advice is play a shy character, play an introverted character. You don't have to be the party face. You don't have to be super bubbly and outgoing. Society has lots of introverts and shy individuals. Maybe you play the cleric that comes in and heals things, the wizard that applies their specialty knowledge when it's applicable. You can also play like a shy barbarian or fighter, that they all have a purpose in the group. They all have a reason to be involved. And I think that's a really important aspect of this is you can still play a shy or introverted character, but make sure that you have a reason to be with the party, with the group adventuring. I think a good table kind of has a mix of both extrovert and introverted players and characters. Everybody gets a little moment in the spotlight to shine. And if you really enjoy playing support characters, great. You can have lots of fun. You can allow some of those other players that want to take the spotlight, that want to be a face or the bubbly extrovert, and, you will be there contributing just as much to the adventure, just in a different way. So are you a shy or introverted player? Do you have any additional advice for how to kind of get more comfortable with roleplay if that's something that you're not as used to? I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thanks to all our patrons, especially Joan. If you like what we do and want to support our channel, head on over to our Patreon page. There you can get access to patron perks and exclusive streaming events. And you can join in on our community discussions. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, go ahead and give it a like. Don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell so you're notified when we post videos, and I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye! I just had a moment of panic that I forgot to hit the record button. I did. It's been recording this whole time. Okay.